Hello again and welcome. Very excited today. There's just lots to talk about. Before we get started, please give me a thumbs up in the chat. Let's make sure this is working. And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are joining from. Welcome. Today is a big day as we have some major announcements coming up. So just checking the chat. Thank you. Great. Welcome. And without further ado, let's get started. But before I do, what's the announcement? The book finally launched. So December 1st, if you haven't been following Leadership Intelligence Handbook, 196 leadership strategies that you can implement in your business or in your coaching. Volume 1, Volume 2 will be out next year, so get this one now. Let's get it to the top ranking in this category so that we can really have an impact and make a difference out there. As usual, these sessions are about chapters from the book. So when you get the book, you can always come back to our website, bihelek.com, and /events, go to the events page, and you'll see all the history there. Or you can find me on YouTube if you want to follow us on YouTube. And the idea is when you read the book, you can watch the video chapter by chapter and do your notes, make sure you take notes and apply what you learn from the book. So when you do that, you'll get familiar with the whole context of the book. If you wanted to learn all 196 strategies that are in there, it would take a long time and it would be difficult for you to remember. The psychology and the science behind how to use the book with the videos is really critical and important for you. So get both. On our website, you'll have the opportunity to also subscribe to more videos that will help you with that. Okay, there is a course coming and a program for leaders to become certified in leadership intelligence. And it's all based around the book, so it's exciting. Okay, so it's on Kindle, on Amazon, and will be also available to purchase on our website. If you prefer a Kindle, you can order it right now. If you want the paperback, it'll be out December 1st. All right, let me get on with our topic today because this is an exciting topic as usual. These are some of my favorite topics because they all come back to behavior intelligence, okay? And understanding behavior is critical. Now, I do see a typo on this page. It should say it is week 4 of the 7-week series in part 3 of the book. So this is chapter 4 of the book. Now, let's get going here. Let's see if my clicker is going to work. Of course, wonderful. All right, so this is important because we're shifting to understanding the importance of behavior in many different ways, and this whole part of the book is focused around that. If you remember the last few sessions, we've already touched on a few things. So today is diving deeper into the accountability problem, okay? And, so standards exist, but nobody follows them. These are some of the challenges that you've probably experienced out there. Performance expectations. I've often talked about, expectations are observable behaviors and they are never documented in the performance guidelines and job responsibilities. So you need to think about that. Okay, we'll talk about that in another session as well. Teams are confused. Okay, they don't understand uh, why you're getting frustrated when it's not really their fault and it's not visible. Accountability triggers defensiveness. We'll talk about that. I'm going to dive into all of these areas in a moment. So standards that aren't visible get missed. My clicker stopped working all of a sudden. Let's fix that. There we go. So, core truth. Ambiguity is the enemy of accountability. What does that really mean? It means when standards are invisible, right, people default to the minimum effort. You know, that if it's not monitored, it's not visible, it's not important, right? They try to project what is expected, and so they hit different expectations rather than the ones you intended for them to have, right? So the 6 principles that we'll cover today are really to deal with those steps that you need to take into consideration. And at the end of the session, as usual, you will get the book basically on what to do, how to implement this in your business so that you can actually do this. Or if you're a coach, you know, a 6-week program that you can do with your client to help them become more effective with their accountability with their team. And this is important to remember. You know, some of these things you might go, oh, wow, you know, this seems to be a lot more than I need to do. If you've got a team of 1 or 2, right, then you need to have, you know, closer communication. You probably deal with things a little bit differently. We're talking here, you know, when you have a team of 6 to 10 people, right, the dynamics can get lost. You know, when you have a corporation with, you know, 20, 50, 100,000 people, these become really important things to keep in mind. So, pillar number 1, it's important to know what we see is what we will remember and follow, right? This is behavior, observable behaviors. Okay, so if it's not visible, if you don't have it on the dashboard, if you don't actually look at it on a regular basis in your meetings, etc., then it's out of sight, out of mind. Okay, it's not visible, it's not important. Okay, what gets displayed gets done, right? So your dashboard needs to pick some of the important things that you want to track. Okay, and they're not all KPIs around the business results. You need to have behavioral results as well, KPIs. So we'll touch on that as well. So publicly tracking things, you know, it's amazing what it does to the culture of an organization. You know, when you start publicly tracking numbers, even if they're not pointing out specific people, you know, our psychology is such, oh, you know, I'm doing that or I'm not doing that. And I start to realize, you know, oh, you know, why is this number like that when I'm not contributing effectively to that? Or, you know, to be proud of that, you know, it creates the culture that we talked about in the past weeks. Yeah. So, you know, the problem here is an example of one that we did with a client. Okay, user satisfaction matters was really the thing, but it was never visible, it was never measured. So weekly NPS scores, Net Promoter Score on the dashboard was tracked, and as soon as that started tracking, you know, within 90 days, it went up 23 points, you know, and it stayed there. Okay, so, but you need to have that consistency, and that's point number 5. I think we'll touch on that today. So your visibility practice is important. So create a visible dashboard, pick one critical standard. Don't try to boil the ocean and fix everything at once. add one each month or each week. Every couple of weeks is probably about as fast as you want to go. But 1 month is great. Imagine 12 things in a year that you could improve by doing this. It's so simple. It's easy. Okay. Pillar number 2, ambiguity. I love this one. This is why we built Acumatch, and we threw away all past assessments because they were fraught with labels and projections, and you are like this, and your personality profile is that. It's all garbage, and because it was, and I started this thing called label busting for that reason. We take every label that's out there and we break it down into the specific observable behaviors in a specific context, because your business is different from somebody else's business. So when you talk about consistency or a visible dashboard, that's observable. These are observable behaviors. I get passionate about that part. Okay. So ambiguity is the enemy of clarity and specificity, right? When it's unclear, people just do the minimum. They interpret it whatever way they want to interpret it because it's vague. It's not clear. We had a competition once where, someone won the competition hands down, but it was at the sacrifice of all the other KPIs that he was responsible for, because the focus was just on one KPI. So be careful of what specificity you apply and what you reward. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Right? So vague words are take ownership. Well, what does that really look like? What does that mean? Okay. But being specific, submit a weekly update or your end of day update daily, right? Track that, make it visible. Okay. Specificity eliminates guesswork. They know exactly what is important because you are tracking it, you are making it visible, and you are being very specific. There is no room for misinterpretation. And if there is, it really should be done in collaboration. I'll talk about that as well, so that if they co-create what needs to be tracked with you, they own it. And we touched on that in the past weeks. So, this organization was all about innovation. They're a product leader. We're a product leader in some ways as well. Innovation is important in the culture of the organization. So if you don't track it, it's just out there. What does it really mean? Okay, we're an innovator. But if you track it and keep going at it, you must keep it going. Otherwise, it loses that initiative, that energy, that momentum, right? So when it became observable, right, suddenly innovation went up. People were excited to share their innovation. And that's critical. That's what you want to have if you're an innovation company. Don't be an innovator if you're a bookkeeping accounting company, right? You don't want to innovate the bookkeeping. You can't do that. But you can innovate your marketing. You can innovate different areas. So, think about what you want to give clarity to, and practice, and practice again. Okay? I can't say that enough. So, frequency, repetition. Pillar number 3. These are so simple, guys. So behavioral clarity reduces emotion. So again, when we have that clarity, it's no longer emotional responses. It's not ambiguous. It's clear, and clarity becomes the critical foundation to improving team dynamics, conflict, all of these things. So, but at the same time, you need to also be careful of the attacking words, right? So when you use the word you are effectively pointing the finger at somebody and pointing them out, okay? That's not a cultural behavioral environment. When you say no interruptions is the guideline that we have during our meetings, it's for everybody, okay? And so saying you are disrespectful is really singling somebody out, whereas saying, interrupting others is a little bit disrespectful. Can we please keep interruptions to a minimum, if at all? Okay. And let's practice waiting to have our thoughts clearly thought out before we leap into it. We're all human, so it's going to happen. But you want people to take notes, think through their ideas, and you want to encourage participation at the same time. You just need to have it in a respectful way. So to do that, reward the right behaviors. This was another example where we did that. Again, conflict was becoming an issue. There was a lot of disagreement. People were interrupting each other. And you can really tell when the dB level of the auditory conversation starts to escalate and people are just trying to yell over the top of each other, and the one that yells the loudest is the toughest and the winner. It's just wrong, right? You know that. So how do you deal with that? Pick 5 behavior communication rules that you want to have in your meetings, okay? And make sure everybody knows them. Nominate someone to be the not the judge, but the person that is holding people accountable at the meeting to stay within those guidelines. All right. And I guarantee you, just like what's happened in this organization, conflict was reduced significantly. Okay. But do it in collaboration. Get them involved in creating those guidelines and get them to actually be the ones that's holding each other accountable, right? This is the parent-child relationship that we talk about in psychology in many different areas. But as the owner or leader, the manager, people, are trying to be compliant. They're trying to please you. Okay, and what their peers say is often more effective than the parent-child relationship. Okay, so get other people involved in that. Okay, I'm not diving into that too deep, but just so that you understand also the psychology and the neuroscience of that. Pillar number 4. Consistency beats intensity. All right. I can't emphasize that enough. People get frustrated. They send these messages, aggressive messages, instead of really reflecting on, the consistency. Was this forgotten? What happened to all of these guidelines and things that we put in place? Did everybody forget them? Yes, they forgot all about them because it wasn't consistently tracked. It wasn't, reminders weren't in place. You're not using the system effectively to also support people. You don't have to wear this on your back all the time to follow up and to track these things. You can put systems in place. We've automated many different systems. With AI today, there's so much more that you can be doing. Okay, so leverage the technology, but also keep it visible. Remember the rules up until now, right? Consistency is critical, right? Delivery accountability. This was a situation where the CEO was getting frustrated with the accountability level. And so it was just simple, everyone's required to just send in a brief end of day update, right? And preferably a start of day huddle or update. This is what I'm going to do today. This is what I accomplished today. It communicates that to everybody. It raises the level of reducing emotion and making it more specific and tangible for people to be able to be compliant. So if accountability is an issue, then consistency is the way to do that. You need to do it regularly. I know whenever we onboard people, it's always start a day, end a day, start a day, end a day, start a day, end a day. After a while, we can drop that focus when people are now shifted from needing to be managed to needing to just be led and given the outcome, the expectations, and they just report weekly now, right? So keep in mind, you don't have to keep it up forever, but these things are important to train the brain, right? They need to do it for themselves still, right? Start a day, end a day. I do it every day, start a day, end a day. I have my whiteboard, I wipe it every day and load it with start a day and then end of day review, right? Your brain needs that, by the way. It's part of the reward mechanism, that affects your dopamine, your cortisol levels, all of these things that are going on in your body. They need that observable feedback. You can't trigger those hormones without an observable physiological engagement with the world around you. So that's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, all of those different tools that you have at your disposal are based on behavior, okay? Behavior intelligence leads to leadership intelligence, okay? Recognition is important. So it reinforces the standards. The formula is simple. It needs to be immediate. It needs to be that specific thing, okay, not vague. And it needs to link to the standards so that you are reinforcing the standards that you're putting in place. So recognize and make them public, okay? You can, in situations like that, you can single people out. They need that reward, okay? But, don't pick on the same person every time. Keep in mind that reward system is critical. And I'll share some stories about that in a moment. Basically, this is the example, actually. So quality was the culture that was put in place, but it was just given lip service. It was a culture point when you walk into the building. It was stated up there, quality first, not quantity, right? But it wasn't working, right? As soon as it was put into the public tracking, so as soon as you walked into the building, they had the quality score up on behind reception there, right? And so as soon as people walked in, they could see that quality was dropping, this month and so forth. So it's critical, okay? Spotlight one person per meeting, link it to standard, track it. It's all critical, important to do that. Mm-hmm. Pillar number 6, if you don't show it, you can't grow it. It's the same as if you don't measure it, you can't improve it, right? And this is really a twist on that. So invisible standards vanish, they disappear, we forget about them. When you make it visible, they become critical, okay? You're really saying it's important. So agendas, dashboards, one-on-ones, public communications, all of these things are critical and important. So it's about the data, right? Data drives decisions. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Well, you must measure it first in order to see that progress, right? There are some good examples that we talk about in those areas as well. So practice embedding these things, spotlight something weekly, call out the examples, reward that, recognize it. When you do that, there was a story I wanted to share there, and that is, one of the organizations, we were having a problem with the meetings and compliance, and so it was only one or two people that were consistently the interrupters, the ones that throw out all the things that could go wrong. So after setting the rules, we practiced with the leader to recognize all of the stuff that was happening that wasn't the things that were wrong. So we only focused the energy. We never focused on the bad behavior. We only focused on when things were being done right, and we rewarded, recognized, and so forth. After a period of time, the shift of balance increased the bar considerably, right? But it needed consistent recognition. It needed to be tracked and rewarded, etc. So focus on rewarding in a culture environment. When you reward the right behavior consistently, the wrong behavior starts to shift completely on its own. You don't need to point it out, okay? People start to recognize, the ones in a group that constantly get recognized, get promotions, maybe rewards, all kinds of things, and they start to relate to that when you actually can make it specific enough for people to understand what they did to get there. And it's natural for everyone to want that, okay? But don't make it too difficult. It's always the one or two people, right? So there are lots of different things that you can put in your trackable, observable, specific behaviors that you want to have your organization, so that everyone has a chance, to apply their strength in their area and be rewarded for it. Okay. I digress, but it's an important point. So this is what happens when you do these things. You shift from the confusion, the blame, the excuses, the emotional conflict. All of these things start to shift to clarity, confidence, excitement, consistency, performance improvement. It's without you even having to focus on those things. If you put these cultural norms in place, I call them, right, it will shift. You will see the change. In fact, we use the AccuMatch mapping specifically to map the culture before and after, to map individuals' changes and transformation before and after. Okay, and that's the power of making it tangible as well. Those are 49 specific behaviors that we look at, but you only need to pick one or two at a time to get those kinds of results. So here's your homework. 6 weeks, right? You can do it for yourself, or you can do it with your coach, or your coach can do it with their clients. They're very simple, as I mentioned. It's easy to do. Start with a dashboard, pick the 3 to 5 things that you want to work on, okay? Make sure it's specific, that it's clear, observable behavior. It's behavior intelligence. It's not vagueness intelligence. It's not mind reading. It's not all of those other labels that we throw out there. It's specific, okay? Make sure you have the communication code in place, right? The reminder system, the automation, use tools like that to help you do that. And your recognition ritual, okay? And I have a whole topic around some of those things. So if you do need advice on that, do reach out and talk to us. Common mistakes to watch for, this is probably stuff you've done. If you're not achieving the leadership level that you want to achieve with your team, it's probably stuff you've announced once and forgotten about, or you ran it for a couple of weeks while it was fresh in your mind, and then something else came along and all of a sudden you've dropped that and you're no longer doing it. Okay. Your vague terms, get specific, guys. There are so many labels out there. We need to bust those labels. Join our network so we can do some label busting with you, right? So you get clarity on how to turn those labels, those projected expectations that are seem clear in your head, but nobody else understands them, right? Nobody can read your mind to turn your expectations into the observable, specific behaviors that you are looking for. Checking these privately, don't just do it in isolation. Make sure it's available to everyone to see so that they can all participate in holding each other accountable. We've talked in past weeks about peer-to-peer accountability. If you haven't, if you're not familiar with that, go back and watch some of those videos. Recognizing outcomes, not behaviors, so that's important. And don't the mistake, right? And then letting standards drift. Those are all the mistakes that we want to overcome. I'd like to just go back to that other slide. So if you set up the dashboard, clarity, communication code, the micro reminders, recognition, rituals, and standards, etc. So, bottom line, accountability isn't about you demanding more of something. It's about what it looks like. What does a behavior look like? And you need to make it visible. We've talked about in the last week, I think it was actually, about they will follow the behavior that you practice. If you don't practice, if you don't set the example, if you don't walk the talk, right? Why should they, right? So it's observable, it's visible, observable, consistent, and able to be recognized and rewarded. When you do that, you create that heightened level of accountability. You can shift behaviors, just like we can reprogram our brains. And we've talked about that. What does it mean to reprogram your brain? You're really just practicing a new habit, okay? And you do it enough times, it becomes unconscious competent. That's as simple as that, right? You want to learn something new, you want to get good at it, you got to practice. Over my career, I've had an interest in music, but I've never put the time in to learn an instrument. Okay, I just don't have the patience for that. So I've never been able to really master an instrument. But in sports, I loved sports, and so any sport I joined, I practiced until I got good at it. That's how you program your brain. If I want to do that, then I need to practice it, make it an unconscious, competent, automatic habit. It's embedded in your subconscious what to do automatically, and you can take control of your own brain. We are human beings, and in the animal kingdom, we're the only ones that have that ability, okay? That differentiates us. So pick one standard, and start working on it. Define the metric, display it, reinforce it daily, right? have weekly recognition, do the quarterly reminders, right? So, your key takeaways today, I hope I made it clear, right? People will follow visibility. Clarity beats emotion every single time. It's logic versus emotion. When you provide clarity, you eliminate the emotion because vagueness creates emotion. Misunderstanding is the biggest four-letter word, if you like, that I have out there, that we do a lot of label busting around misunderstanding. Okay, it's the opposite to clarity, specificity. Okay, consistency will win. Recognition increases that. So when you have consistency with the recognition, it creates that sustainable accountability. All right. As usual, before I wrap up, I want you to know that we'll be watching questions online. If you have anything, please feel free to share those. Next week, we get into the emotional neutrality, okay, and I'll explain that a lot more next week. So join me on that. Leading through the chaos, the power of regulated presence. Okay, exciting topic. biqorg.com/events. You'll find all these recordings. Get the book, join our network, okay, or book a meeting if you have a specific need. You're always welcome to come to the website and book a meeting, okay. So before I leave you, let me just switch this over quickly and remind you the book launch is happening. Okay, so go online, go to Amazon, whatever country you're in, and pre-order your copy of the book. It's released December 1st. Thank you. Have a great rest of your week.